chapter 110, verse 22, continuing. It was by virtue of such a representation that the dreaming mind of King Harishchandra took the course of one night for the long period of 12 years. It was owing to a similar idea of the mind that the whole creation of Brahma appeared to be situated within himself. So what we have here is a clear explanation that the universe is literally a waking induced lucid dream in the mind of the creator. Now, King Harishchandra, he was induced into a lucid dream, but he really didn't appreciate it as a dream, did he? He appreciated it as real life. So he had lost his lucidity. But in the situation of our universe, the Creator is totally aware that the entire universe is being created in his mind as a dream. The presentation of a fair prospect before the imagination turns the present pain to pleasure, like a man bound in chains forgets his painful state in the hope of his release the next morning. The mind being well fortified and brought under the subjection of reason brings all the parts of the body and internal passions of the heart under our control. But a loose and ungoverned mind gives a loose rein to go astray, like the loosened thread of a string of pearls, scatters the precious grains at random over the ground. So in this case, the mind of King Harishchandra, because he was experiencing this dreaming state, but not realizing he was dreaming, his mind would still be in that category of a loose and ungoverned mind. He didn't put himself into that dreaming state, but he was induced into it through the magic of the sorcerer that was there at the time. Whereas the creator of our universe, he created this dream consciously. Verse 26, the mind that preserves its clear-sightedness, equanimity, and stability in all places and under all conditions, remains its even temper and good discernment at all times, under the testimony of its consciousness and approbation of its good conscience. O Ram, you must retain your self-possession at all times. Know what that means, self-possession? That means being established as the silent witness. Self, silent witness, possess, owned. This is who he is. and remain like an unmoved, dumb, and dull body, with your mind acquainted with the states of all things, but undisturbed by the fluctuation of the objects that come into your awareness. So this is our whole process in our Sahasrara Sirsha Brahma meditation. It's a process of training the mind, mastering the mind, making the mind well fortified, making the mind clear with equanimity and stability in all places, training us to become established in the silent witness while we observe the mind. The mind is creating the dream. If we are not established in the silent witness, we are lost in the dream, like King Harishchandra. But if we are established in the silent witness, the dream is lucid. We know who created it, and we know we are observing the mind projecting this dream. And that's literally the experience. The mind is like a movie projector, projecting images onto its own internal screen. That screen is called the Chittakash. Now, if we're not established in the silent witness, the dream that the mind is projecting is going to be taken from individual karmic traces. All the dreams that we have at night when we're asleep, when we're not connected with the silent witness, or even if we are vaguely aware that we're dreaming, these are coming from individual karmic traces. In fact, when we are established in the silent witness, and we're not intending to create any dream in the mind, then no dream is created. There is no lucid dream. When we lay down to rest, established in the silent witness, we do not dream. The mind is silent. The mind is actually gone. There is no mind. There is no mind to think, because the fuel of the mind, individual karmic traces, have ceased to exist. On the periphery, if we're in moksha level 1, there is some awareness of additional individual karmic traces that could be balanced. But as we maintain our connection with the silent witness, our identity with the silent witness, we simply just be. And the sleeping phase at night is just like the waking phase of the day. If we choose to observe what the body is doing, then we witness the activity of the body. If we don't choose to observe it, that's fine too. The body moves about on the basis of the need of the time. whatever is needed, the body does. Verse 28. The mind by its own nature is restless, with all its vain thoughts and desires within itself. Man is carried abroad by its currents, over hills and deserts and across rivers and seas, to far and remote cities and countries. The waking mind deems the objects of its desire to be as sweet as honey, and whatever it does not like to be as bitter as gall, even though they may be sweet to taste. Some minds, with too much self-reliance upon themselves, and without considering the true nature of things, give them different forms and colors, according to their own conceptions and opinions, so they are far from the truth. And this is the experience of an individual who is lost in the mind. We even have common expressions for that. Some people who are by personality optimistic see the glass half full of water. A person of a pessimistic nature sees a glass as half empty. It's the same glass of water, but our milieu of individual karmic traces casts a positive or negative connotation upon it. 31. The mind is a pulsation of the power of divine consciousness. It ventilates in breeze and glares in luminous bodies, melts in liquids and hardens in solid subjects. It vanishes in emptiness and extends in space. It dwells in everything at its pleasure and flies from everywhere at its will. It whitens black and blackens white, and is confined to no place or time, but extends through all. The mind being absent or settled elsewhere, we do not taste the sweet that we are sucking, swallowing, or grinding under our teeth, or licking with the tongue. What is seen by the mind is seen with the eyes, and what it does not see is never seen by the visual organs. Just like things lying in the dark are not perceptible to the sight. The mind is embodied in the physical body, accompanied by the organs of sense. But it is the mind that actuates the senses and receives the sensations. The senses are the products of the mind, but the mind is not a production of sensations. Those great souls, philosophers, who have investigated the connection between the two quite different substances of body and mind, and those learned men who show us how boy and mind are mutually related, are truly worthy of our veneration. A beautiful woman decorated with flowers in the braids of her hair and looking loosely with her amorous glances, is like a log of wood in contact with the body of one whose mind is absent from himself. The dispassionate yogi who sits reclined in his abstract meditation in the forest, owing to the absence of his mind, has no sense of his hands being bitten off by a voracious beast. The mind of a sage practiced in mental abstraction may with ease be inclined to convert his pleasures to pain and his pains to pleasures. The mind employed in some other thought and inattentive to the present discourse finds it like a piece of wood cut off by an axe. A man sitting at home and thinking of standing on the precipice of a mountain or falling into the hollow cave shudders at the idea of his imminent danger. So also one is startled at the prospect of a dreary desert, even in his dream, and is bewildered to imagine the vast deep under the cloud. The mind feels a delight at the sight of a lovely spot in its dream, and at seeing hills, cities, and houses stretching, or the clusters of stars shining in the extended plain of the sky. The restless mind is busy stretching many a hill, valley, cities, and houses in our dreams, like waves in the vast ocean of the mind. As the waters of the sea display themselves in huge surges, billows, and waves, so the mind is in the body, displays itself in the various sights exhibited in our dreams. As the leaves and branches, flowers and fruits are the products of the shooting sea, so everything that is seen in our waking dreams is the creation of our minds. As a golden image is no other than gold, so the creatures of our living dreams are nothing but the creation of our fanciful mind. As a drop or shower of rain, and a foam or froth of the wave are only different forms of water. So the varieties of phenomena that are sensed are only transformations of the same mind. These are only the thoughts of our minds, seen in our waking dreams, like the various costumes that an actor wears to represent different characters in a play. As King Lavana believed himself to be a tribal for some time, so we believe ourselves to be so-and-so by the thoughts of our mind. Whatever we think ourselves to be in our consciousness, the same soon comes to pass upon it. Therefore, mold the thoughts of your mind in any way you like. An embodied being sees many cities, towns, hills and rivers before it, all of which are only visions of waking dreams, stretched out by the inner mind. One sees a demon in a god and a snake where there is no snake. It is the idea that fosters the thought. As King Lavana fostered the thoughts of his ideal forms. As the idea of man includes that of a woman. And the idea of father implies that of a son. So the mind includes the wish. And with every person, the wish is accompanied by its action. It is by its wish that the mind is subject to death, to be born again in other bodies. Though the mind is a formless thing of its nature, yet by its constant habit of thinking, it contracts the notion of it being a living substance. Jiva. The mind is busy with thoughts of long-drawn wishes that cause its repeated births and deaths, and their accompaniments of hope and fears and pleasures and pain. So we see this collection of individual karmic traces that form the fuel and basis of the mind. It is the smoke from the karmic traces that are literally the thoughts that arise in the mind. And the mind has been thinking for so long, for so many lifetimes. It has developed a habit of thinking. It is constantly reviewing its inventory of individual karmic traces, its memories, reviewing its memories. This is the nature of the mind. The mind believes itself to exist and to be alive. But like King Harishchandra, it's only an illusion. Incredible things, entire lifetimes, thousands, millions, billions of lifetimes come and go. None of them are real, including this one. Our task is to transcend the mind, becoming established in the silent witness. We observe how the mind continues or does not continue to exist. Once we move into the realm of the silent witness and we're established there, it is difficult to remain established there if the mind continues to be busy with its thoughts, pulls us out of the silent witness. So there's a requirement to remain established in the silent witness that the mind disappear, that the mind become silent. So the balancing of individual karmic traces spontaneously accompanies the rise of being established in the silent witness. '57. Pleasure and pain are situated in the mind like oil in sesame seed. These are thickened or thinned like oil under the particular circumstances of life. Prosperity thickens our pleasure, and adversity our pain. These are thinned by their reverses again, like the greater or lighter pressure of the oil mill that thickens or thins the oil. So the deeper or lighter attention of the mind aggravates or lightens its sense of pleasure or pain. As our wishes are directed by the particular circumstances of time and place, so the measurements of time and place are made according to the intensity or laxity of our thought. It is the mind that is satisfied and delighted at the fulfillment of our wishes, and not the body, which is unconscious of its enjoyment. The mind is delighted with its imaginary desires within the body. Like a secluded woman takes delight in the harem. He who does not give indulgence to levities and fickleness in his heart is sure to subdue the mind. As one binds an elephant by its chains to the post. He whose mind does not wave back and forth like a brandished sword, but remains fixed as a pillar to its best intended object, is the best of men on earth. All others are like insects, continually moving in the mind. He whose mind is free from fickleness and is sedate in itself is united with his best object in his meditation of the same. Steadiness of the mind is attended with stillness of worldly commotion, just as suspension of churning Mandara mountain was attended with the calmness of the ocean of milk. The thoughts of the mind embroiled in worldly cares becomes the sources of those turbulent passions in the heart, which, like poisonous plants, fill this harmful world. Foolish men, infatuated by their giddiness and ignorance, revolve round the center of their hearts, like giddy bees flutter about lotus flowers of the lake until at last, weary from their giddy circles, they fall down in the whirlpools that hurl them in irreparable ruin. Chapter 111, the necessity of control the heart and mind. Vashishta continued. Now listen to what I will tell you is the best remedy to heal the disease of the heart. It is within one's own power and harmless and a sweet potion to taste. It is by your own exertion of your consciousness and by diligent renunciation of the best objects of your desire that you can bring back your unimaginable mind under your control. Let's look at this statement a moment. Sounds like a worthy thing to accomplish. Bringing back the unimaginable mind under your control. So he says that by your own exertion of your own consciousness. When we exert our consciousness, what are we doing? We're thinking, aren't we? This is how we exert consciousness. We induce our thought in consciousness. And by diligent renunciation of the best objects of your desire. What does that mean? That means renunciation, giving up, not remaining in focus, letting go. So we are letting go of the activities of the mind and becoming established in the silent witness. So by thinking and being established in the silent witness, this is how we bring our mind under control. He who remains at rest by giving up the objects of his desire is truly the conqueror of his mind, which is reduced under his subjection like an elephant lacking its tusks. The mind is to be carefully treated, like a patient with prescriptions of reason, and by discriminating truth from untruth. Just as we distinguish a good diet from what is injurious. Mold your heated imagination by cool reasoning, by precepts of the scriptures, and by association with the dispassionate, as they do heated iron with a cold hammer. Like a boy who suffers no pain turning himself this way and that in his play. So it is not difficult to turn the mind from one thing to another at pleasure. Employ your mind to acts of goodness by the light of your understanding, and join your soul to the meditation of God by the light of your spirit. The renunciation of a highly desirable object is within the power of one who resigns himself to the divine will. Therefore, it is a shame that the worm of human being who finds this teaching difficult to practice. He who in his understanding can take the unpleasant for the pleasurable may with ease subdue his mind. Like a giant, by his might overcomes the boy. It is possible to govern the mind by one's attention and effort, like controlling a horse. When the mind is brought still, it is easy to enter into divine knowledge. Shame on that jackass man who does not have the power to subdue his restless mind. It is entirely under his control, and he can easily govern it. No one can reach the best course of his life without tranquility of his mind. This is to be acquired by means of his own effort to get rid of the fond objects of his desire. Literally, that means to balance karmic traces. By destroying the mind's appetites and through reason and knowledge of truth, one can have his absolute dominion over the mind without any change or rival in it. The precepts of a teacher, the instructions of the scriptures, the efficacy of mantras, and the force of arguments are all trifles, like bits of straw if the mind is not calm. Calmness can be gained by renouncing our desires and knowledge of truth. So what does this mean? How do we renounce our desires? Well, we connect with the silent rhythms, right? Our desires are the expressions of our individual karmic trace. As long as we are established in the mind, those desires rule. They create constant activity in the mind, spur us to constant deeds. But when we're established in the silent witness and we employ the knowledge of truth, then what happens? This knowledge of truth, this is the divine karmic traces. The divine karmic traces are literally the opposite, the antidotes for the karmic traces. So the karmic traces are laying on a bed of divine karmic traces all the time. But they're looking in the wrong direction. They're looking away from divine karmic traces. So we must bring divine karmic traces to the individual karmic traces. And we do that through the study of Yoga Vashishta. Only when all the desires of the mind are cut off by the weapon of indifference to all worldly things can the one all-pervading quiescent Brahman be known. All men's bodily pains are quite at an end as soon as the mind is at rest, after the removal of mental anxieties by means of true knowledge, literally the balancing of karmic traces on the deepest level of mind in the Manamaya kosha with divine karmic traces.